So here I am, Garrett, sitting in my kitchen at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon when I should be at the office. Let me explain the 4 calls and 1 text I've sent in the past 2 hours. An hour and 45 minutes of pure rage, followed by 15 minutes of calculated destruction. Yeah, I know exactly how many lives I'm about to wreck. Hold on, someone's knocking. My daughter Natalie walked in looking worried. "Where's Emma?" she asked immediately. I told her I'd called her husband Blake, who left work early to grab their kid from daycare. "Blake's solid," I said, and I meant it. Most fathers-in-law hate their daughters' husbands on principle, but Blake's genuinely a good man. I actually chuckled despite everything, and Natalie gave me this grim smile. We've always shared the same dark sense of humor. "Have you told Kyle yet?" she asked about her brother. I shook my head. "He's deployed right now. I'll email him later." She nodded, then we just sat there in this heavy silence. Finally, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Why would she do this to you?" "No clue, sweetheart," I admitted. "Why didn't she just talk to you?" Natalie pressed. I hadn't actually confronted my wife yet, I told her. She was still upstairs. Natalie's eyes shot toward the staircase leading to our bedroom, and I could see the horror dawning on her face. "I wanted everyone here at once," I explained, "so she can tell us all why she did it." "Everyone?" Natalie asked. "Yeah, I got a few more guests coming," I said. She asked what I planned to do, and I told her exactly what I needed to do to survive this nightmare. "So you already have a plan?" she asked. I nodded. She wondered if it depended on my wife's reasoning, but I shut that down fast. The facts were crystal clear. The reason didn't matter anymore. "But what if she was blackmailed?" Natalie suggested desperately. I told her if she'd seen and heard what I had, she'd know blackmail wasn't in the equation. Natalie looked into my eyes for a long moment. "I thought you were handling this well, but you're not, are you?" she said softly. I turned away because no daughter should see her father cry. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. I told her to follow her conscience, that I wouldn't judge her either way. She thanked me, then asked if I had any idea why this happened. "I thought we had a solid marriage until this morning," I said. "What happened this morning?" Natalie asked. I explained that after 27 years together, I knew my wife's routines better than my own. She showered every morning, washed her hair on Tuesdays and Fridays. Those days she'd take about an hour, other days maybe 30 minutes. This morning she was in there for 90 minutes. When I went to tell her she'd be late for work, I saw the lingerie she'd put on and the outfit she'd laid out. It wasn't her normal work clothes. I asked about her plans for the day, and she said nothing unusual, just work. She was lying. Every other time she thought she'd be late, she'd get anxious. This morning, she was calm as could be. I knew she wasn't going to work. "So what did you do?" Natalie asked. I called in sick, parked up the street, and waited. I was going to follow her, but she never left. Around 11:30, this guy from her real estate office showed up. I snuck inside and confirmed what I suspected, then sat down to figure out my next move. Made some calls, and here we are. "Were there any signs before today?" Natalie asked. "I thought you two were solid." I told her there was nothing, as far as I knew. We were supposed to work a few more years, retire, and live happily ever after. "I have to ask," Natalie started, but I cut her off. "Don't even say it. No, I never cheated on your mother. Never disrespected a woman like that in my life. Even when our intimate life basically died 2 years ago, I just dealt with it." "Wait, you haven't been intimate in 2 years?" she asked, shocked. I explained that her mother was never particularly interested in that aspect of marriage. She claimed she didn't enjoy it much. When she started, it was okay, but getting her interested was always the challenge. When menopause hit 2 years back, everything stopped completely. "So when you found her today, it must have destroyed you," Natalie said. I just gave her a hard stare that said everything. Another knock at the door. I opened it to find my father-in-law, Raymond. "Come in," I said. "Where is she?" he asked. I told him upstairs in our bedroom. "I need to see for myself," he said. I understood and told him to go ahead, just not to disturb her. The old man climbed the stairs and came back down a minute later looking like he'd aged 10 years. He collapsed into a chair. I poured him whiskey, which he downed in one gulp. "I can't believe she'd do this to you," Raymond said. "She knows how devastated you were when your fiancé cheated on you. She helped you through that. Not only that, she knows how destroyed I was when I caught her mother cheating, and she ran off with that guy, abandoning me and the kids. He stood up abruptly. I need to leave. A woman shouldn't see her grandfather cry either. I walked him to the door while Natalie stayed back. I wanted him to keep his dignity. On the porch, he gripped my shoulders for support. Do what you need to do, son. But nothing physical, okay? I couldn't stand by for that. I promised I wouldn't damage a hair on his daughter's head, but apologized for what I was about to do to her otherwise. A man's got to do what he's got to do. He stared at me, nodded, then shuffled to his car and drove away, a broken man. I called his son, my wife's brother, and suggested he check on their dad without explaining why. I just hung up when I heard the upstairs toilet flush. Nap time was over. I rejoined Natalie and we sat quietly for a few minutes. Then we heard the bed creaking and sounds of passion from upstairs. See, Natalie, does that sound like blackmail? I asked. No, Dad, how can you just sit here? Why don't you go up there and stop it? She asked, her voice breaking. I explained that I had this ability to shut off my emotions, to disassociate from the feelings. Oh, is that where I get it from? She said. But why torture yourself? Why not just kick her out? I told her there was one more visitor coming. Right on cue, another knock. I opened the door to a woman a few years younger than me, surprisingly with 2 teenagers in tow, a boy and a girl. Mr. Brennan? She asked. Yes, call me Garrett, I replied. I'm Vanessa Whitmore, and these are my kids, Ethan and Lily. I picked them up from school. If what you said is true, I wanted them here to understand it was their father who destroyed our family. I shook hands with Ethan, noting his surprisingly firm grip. I introduced everyone to Natalie. You said you had proof? Vanessa asked. I walked to the pants draped over the couch arm and pulled out a wallet, handing it to her. She opened it, looked at the driver's license, and a tear escaped. I guess she'd hoped I was wrong. Her face hardened suddenly. Well, Garrett, where are they? In response, I held my finger to my lips. We sat there listening to the sounds from upstairs. You haven't confronted them yet? Vanessa asked, shocked. No, I wanted us to do this together, I explained. I took some videos I'm happy to share. I also set up a voice recorder under the bed. She was silent for a moment, conflict clear on her face. I have a locksmith standing by to change my locks, she said. I was just waiting to confirm you were right before giving them the go-ahead. This isn't the first time, honestly. Natalie and I waited while she called the locksmith, then her lawyer. We distracted her kids with small talk while the sounds continued upstairs. Finally, Vanessa squared her shoulders. Okay, let's do this. Vanessa, Natalie, and I went upstairs while the kids waited below. After Vanessa peeked through the doorway, I motioned for the others to stay hidden, then entered the room. I stood at the foot of the bed and watched with disgust. She was making sounds she'd always refused to make with me, said it was demeaning. Suddenly, she cried out and collapsed. He let her rest, then resumed. When she rolled over, her eyes met mine. Her face fell and she screamed. Her lover followed her gaze and saw me too. He started to rise, looking ridiculous. Once on his feet, he stopped and looked at my face. I could see him getting a really bad feeling about his immediate future. That's right, I said. I'm bigger and meaner than you, and believe me, a lot angrier. Get back in that bed and cover yourself and my ex-wife. He obeyed immediately. Within seconds, they were side by side under the covers. I noted my wife's expression had gone from shock to defiance. I let her speak first. Garrett, I want a divorce, she said. I've fallen in love with Wesley. I'm sorry you found out like this. We were going to tell you tomorrow. I replied calmly that she'd get her divorce. By the way, I was going to find out his name was Wesley Whitmore eventually, wasn't I? Not the smartest move leaving your wallet downstairs, buddy. They both looked shocked. Just curious. But why end our marriage this way? You knew catching you cheating would devastate me. Finally, I saw some shame on her face. I'm sorry, Garrett. We couldn't help falling in love. I told her I accepted that, but they could have helped putting the cart before the horse. They could have helped being together before announcing the divorce. I'm sorry, Garrett. I just wanted to know Wesley and I were compatible. We didn't want you to see us. If it helps, this was the first time, she said. Don't lie to me, I roared. Don't be crude, Garrett. I don't want to end our marriage fighting. Can't we part as friends? This almost broke through my defenses. I'm guessing under pressure, she was quoting from tomorrow's rehearsed speech. You've got to be kidding. You're in my bed with another man and wanted to part as friends? I don't think so. We stared at each other until she dropped her eyes. I decided to start evening the pain. Your dad asked me to tell you how disappointed he is. He hoped you wouldn't turn out as big a cheater as your mother. Her face went white. You didn't, she whispered. I did. I'm surprised you didn't see him. He was standing right here half an hour ago. She asked why, and I told her because I wanted her to start feeling some of the pain I'd been feeling. I don't know what the kids will make of it all. She begged me not to tell the kids. Sorry, too late, I replied. Natalie stepped into view at that exact moment. My wife glanced over, squealed, and hid under the sheets. Don't bother, Mom, Natalie said. It doesn't work for ostriches, and it won't work for you. She stayed under the sheets, whimpering. Her bedmate just looked uncomfortable. When Dad called me, I gave you the benefit of the doubt, Natalie continued. I couldn't believe you'd do this to him. I see why he called me now. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I might have urged him to forgive you. But seeing you like this, I know that's never happening. Silence except for deep sobs. Well, Mother, if you have nothing to say, I will. We won't need you to babysit Emma this weekend. In fact, if cutting you off keeps her safe from your poisonous influence, you can kiss goodbye to ever seeing her again. A pitiful no came from under the sheets. Natalie was sobbing now. You should have seen Granddad's face before you devastated him. She turned to run, but I grabbed and hugged her. She pulled away and ran downstairs. We all heard the front door slam. It was minutes before my wife re-emerged with red eyes. Why did you have to do that, Garrett? She asked. Because you haven't felt half the pain I have yet. You haven't had your heart ripped out and stomped on. But you will, I promise. I told them both to get out of my house. Defiance returned to her face. If anyone's leaving, it's you. I used the power of attorney you gave me to transfer the deeds into my name. The vehemence of her own voice seemed to surprise her. She could see by my face that revealing another betrayal made me even angrier. She realized she was just digging herself deeper. I recovered quickly. With shocking news, it stops hurting as much when it reaches a certain point. I'd reached that point 2 hours ago. How are you going to afford the mortgage? I asked. We worked this out, Garrett. With my commissions plus Wesley's pay, we'll cover it easily, she answered. What pay is that? Your boss, Mr. Patterson, said to tell you both you're fired. He would have told you himself, but both your phones are off. Good Christian that he is, he took a dim view of two married people cheating on company time. She asked weakly if I'd really told him. Yep, sent him some lovely photographs too, I confirmed. Her bedmate finally found his voice. How do you know I'm married? He asked. Driver's license, remember? Phone book, telephone, easy. Wife Vanessa, about 5'6", pretty red hair. Kids Ethan and Lily look like good kids. Tell me, were you going to screw them over like this woman was planning to screw me? Please, Mr. Brennan, don't tell my wife, he pleaded. Why not? Haven't you finished draining your bank accounts yet in preparation for sailing off with my wife? She was getting the house. Just give me a chance to tell her gently. She doesn't deserve this. I still love her in my own way. She doesn't deserve to find out like this. I told him he was right. She didn't deserve to find out like I did. Yes, unfortunately, it's too late, I said. I didn't need to turn around to know when Vanessa and her kids stepped through the door. His face told the story. The expression was priceless. Yes, way too late, my darling husband, Vanessa said. I'll be eternally grateful to Mr. Brennan for bringing this to my attention. The video he's giving me should trigger the post-nuptial agreement we had drawn up last time I forgave you. My wife's head swung to look at her lover. I idly wondered if it was because he was a serial cheater or because their financial plans were now ruined. The locks should be changed on my house by now, Vanessa continued. If you want your things, they'll be in the dumpster I'm hiring this afternoon. Throughout this, Wesley just looked at his feet with horror. I found out later he'd initially seduced my wife, but the test drive had been her idea. His plan had actually been to tell his family the next day, too. He looked forlornly at his wife, then briefly at his kids, but couldn't face them long. Vanessa was losing control, but rallied. Well, kids, if you ever wondered what a cheater looks like, take a good look. My wife cringed under their combined stare. Vanessa grabbed the kids and stormed out. I walked to the bed and snarled at the cowering couple. Just get out of my house. You have no idea of the rage I'm feeling right now. I'll return in 2 hours. I want you both gone. Don't even think about trying to rip me off. If you do, Your chances of living happily ever after will plummet from very small to non-existent. Understand? One look at my face convinced them I was serious. I ran after Vanessa and caught them before they drove off. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop. We consoled each other and tried to help the kids through what was coming. Ethan proved mature beyond his years and helped comfort his sobbing sister. I really wished her father was there to see his daughter's pain. I gave Vanessa my card and offered to help with anything. We parted as friends. The next week was brutal. Yeah, I can turn my emotions off in a crisis, but that doesn't stop the pain, only delays it. I was busy with work and lawyers, though. They were very interested in my evidence, particularly the voice recorder I retrieved from under the bed. It had picked up conversations where the two lovers detailed their planning to grab the majority of marital assets from both households. My wife was justifying it as her right because of my earning capacity. My lawyer informed me that judges could deviate from the standard equal split, and evidence of premeditated scheming often swayed them. Natalie insisted on hearing the recordings too. We were both stunned by her mother's planned vindictiveness. Natalie actually called her mother for an explanation, but got nothing convincing. I put on a brave face for Natalie and a brave voice for my son when he called, but I was struggling. The weekend after everything went down, I got a welcome call from Vanessa. She was happy to mow her own lawn, but had no idea how the mower worked. After some lessons on Sunday and doing other small maintenance jobs, I was invited to stay for dinner. We were still chatting when the kids went to bed, then things turned serious. "How are you doing, Vanessa?" I asked. "About as well as expected. I think I've been mentally preparing for this for years." My lawyers discovered what he planned for our finances and blocked it all. "I'll get the house, child support, alimony, plus 90% of the assets thanks to your evidence and the postnup." I told her mine said something similar, but only 50 to 70%. "He came around begging," she said. "His lawyers told him the same things, and being financially destroyed terrifies him." I told him to get lost. "The only thing that worries me is the effect on the kids. Lily will be fine, but I'm worried about Ethan." "I know," I said. "At his age, a boy needs a good male role model. Can I volunteer for the job? I'd be honored to help where I can." Vanessa was silent for a moment. "I know your ego must be fragile right now, so I don't know how to say this," she started. "Don't worry, support for Ethan is all I'm offering at the moment," I replied. Relief flooded her face. We discussed details for a while. "How about you, Garrett? Are you okay?" she asked. "I don't know. I'm still confused. Finding her with your Wesley emasculated me. It makes me doubt my manhood. Was I so inadequate? Destroying her relationship with her kids, her father, our mutual friends, getting her fired. It doesn't seem enough. I still feel like only half a man." Vanessa stared at me for a long moment. Finally, she continued with steely eyes. "You know what you have to do to reclaim your manhood, don't you?" "Yes, I do," I answered. "Good," she replied. "How far are you comfortable with me going?" I asked. The steel was now in her voice, too. "As far as you think you need to go to get rid of your demons, Garrett. You're too good a guy to allow lingering hurt to mess with the rest of your life. Let it all out, okay?" I told her I'd need an alibi. "You'll have one, believe me," she answered. When she told me what she had in mind, we both laughed for a long time. I needed that. "What about you? Do you need revenge on my wife?" I asked. "Good Lord, no. I know what a smooth talker he can be. Your poor wife didn't stand a chance. I almost feel sorry for her." We parted as friends, and she promised to talk to Ethan about helping restore an old car I had. He was interested, and that set the pattern for the next 6 weeks. After school, he'd come over and we'd work on the car. I used every opportunity to talk to him about values, and we became solid friends. After I took him home, it was a different matter. I used all my free time to spy on the happy couple. With our bank accounts frozen by the lawyers, Wesley and my wife couldn't get a place together. She was staying with one of her few remaining friends, and he was doing the same with one of his. They spent most evenings together before going their separate ways late at night. Finally, I'd established enough of a pattern that I called Vanessa one Thursday night and announced the next night was it. She arranged for the kids to go to her parents for the night. I drove to her place and parked in her driveway. After a kiss on the lips and a "give him one from me," I wheeled an old motorcycle of Wesley's out the back gate and started it a block away. Once at his friend's place, I looked around, then quietly shot out the streetlight with my air pistol. After that, it was just waiting in the bushes at the side of the driveway. He surprised me by breaking routine. He arrived by cab 40 minutes later rather than by car. The reason became clear when I saw his unsteady steps. He'd been drinking. Now look, fighting has never been in my nature. My sense of honor demanded a fair fight. Well, fairish anyway. About as fair as sleeping with a guy's wife when he didn't even know you existed. I stepped in front of him. "Hi, Wesley," I announced. He froze, then in the dim light, I saw recognition dawn. He certainly didn't react the way I expected. "Well, if it isn't the guy who couldn't keep his woman in check," he muttered. Very bad move on his part. Instantly, my careful plan of limited attack went out the window. The wronged beast pounced. A right to the jaw knocked him to his hands and knees. Then, my memory got hazy. From later reports, I think I kicked him in the ribs several times and stomped on his kidneys and lower legs before landing well-aimed kicks between his legs. Luckily, my red haze lifted, allowing me to complete the last part of my plan. I lifted his unconscious form and dumped him in the middle of the road. Maybe the police would think he was a hit-and-run sufferer. Maybe not. I walked back to the motorcycle and rode to a shopping center. In the shadows, I changed clothes and dumped them along with my gloves in a dumpster. Finally, I rode a block away from Vanessa's house and pushed the bike back. Vanessa was expectantly awaiting my return and grilled me on how things went. She didn't seem upset that I'd overstepped my plan in my rage. Upset people don't normally grin like that. When she had every detail, I excused myself to shower and get rid of any potential evidence. I checked my knuckles for bruises. All good. My eyes were closed as I was rinsing my hair when I felt a cool breeze, then warm skin. A pair of arms encircled me from behind. "I thought you didn't want this," I said. "Forget what I went. You need this. You've taken the man, now you need to take his woman," she answered. I spun around and we kissed. I needed that. We finally broke apart. Besides, when the police come to check your alibi, I want to be as convincing as possible. "Now finish up and get in the bedroom," she said while smiling. Who was I to deny a lady's request? I awoke in the pre-dawn light. As I felt her slip back into bed, she snuggled up to me. "I'm sorry, Vanessa. I was tired last night. I hope you weren't too disappointed." She laughed. "If that was you in second gear, God help me if I ever get your third." After that, we both dozed again. I awoke to breakfast and coffee being delivered. "Hey, Garrett, some idiot broke the back window of your car last night. I've already called the police." This was accompanied by a wink. Sure enough, the police came around and my license plate was entered in their system. Before long, it was linked to a reported attack last night. It was convenient that my alibi and I were together in a house reeking of closeness. The nosy neighbor backed up our story of my car being parked there at the time of the attack, as it had been once a week for the last few weeks. She didn't know I wasn't in the spare room. I was never a serious suspect. I saw my wife one more time about a week after her lover's bad night. She called to say she was coming over to get the rest of her stuff. When I explained it had all been donated to charity, she said she wanted to talk anyway. When I heard her car pull up, I looked out the window to see her standing next to it on the phone. I answered the door in my robe. When she finally knocked, she frowned at my choice of apparel, but I made sure my face betrayed nothing. As I invited her in, I asked her to hand over her phone and handbag, then put them in the spare room and close the door. She was smart enough to guess I suspected she might try to record this conversation. With what she was wearing, she couldn't be concealing one. We settled into chairs on either side of the kitchen table. "Garrett, you should know I've arranged with a friend that if I don't call within 60 minutes, she'll send the police here." I nodded at her wise precaution but remained silent. I had only one thing to say to her and it could wait. "Garrett, could I just say how sorry I am with how our marriage ended?" she started. "Save your breath. I'm not the slightest bit interested in listening to you trying to appease your conscience by justifying why you tried to destroy me." The expression on her face was priceless. It was like, who was this guy? "Okay, Garrett, it was you that beat up Wesley, wasn't it?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. That caught her completely off guard. She obviously expected me to deny it. "What?" she asked, stunned. "What's so hard to understand?" "You asked if I'd beaten your lover up. I said yes, it was me." She asked why. Said he'd never done anything to me. Come on. Cheating can't have rotted your brain that quickly. When I saw you with him, it completely emasculated me, destroyed my confidence as a man, made me doubt my ability, robbed me of my pride. She was shocked. I'm guessing she'd never considered this aspect of what she'd done. That's what cheating does, you know? After a while, I realized I had two choices, I continued. I could end up a sad, lonely old man like your dad, a loveless, vacant shell. Or I could fight my way out of the corner you and your lover pushed me into. Does it really surprise you I chose the man's option? The only option that would allow me to remain a man? Yes, I destroyed your boyfriend, and if I feel it necessary so I can hold my head up high, I'll do it again and again. You forced this showdown. There can only be one survivor. To stop you and him from destroying me, I have to destroy you both. The words were said with such quiet, chilling certainty that they left no room for doubt. But I hoped, coming in here, that by completely isolating me from friends and family and getting me fired, you were done with me, she said. Wesley and I just fell in love, Garrett. We couldn't help it. You can remember being in love, can't you? I told her yes, I could remember back 8 weeks. As I said that day, maybe it wasn't your choice to fall in love, but it was your choice what you did about it. If you'd just come to me and said you'd fallen in love with someone else and wanted a divorce, I would have been sad, but would have gladly given you your freedom or fought to regain your love, whichever I chose at the time. By announcing your intentions the way you did, viciously and cruelly, you declared war on me and betrayed everything I stand for and everything I thought you stood for. What about now, Garrett? Can you leave Wesley and me in peace now you've had your revenge? She asked. Yes, I think I can. If only because I can't think of anything else to destroy. She thanked me, but I cut her off. Don't get excited. I'm not the one you should be worried about. I've had my revenge on Wesley. His wife hasn't started on you yet. If I were you, I'd look out for her. She's one mean lady, I can tell you. At that moment, a disembodied female voice came floating down the stairs from the master bedroom. Are you coming back to bed, Garrett? You promised me 6 more today, and you're under budget. My wife's face went pale. Who is that? She asked. Vanessa, I replied. She ran out, yelling a warning not to go to the police again. I climbed the stairs to a fully clothed Vanessa. She held me until the tremors ceased. As for my wife, she took off for places far away. I never tried to find or contact her ever again. Like I said, Garrett's the name and I feel great. I've read somewhere that people who get revenge find it a hollow experience. That's nonsense. It's the most effective cure for depression I've ever heard about. Time to stop dwelling on the past. It's too negative. My new life awaits. Vanessa and I never became an official couple. We did use each other to relieve our frustrations fairly regularly, but there was never the necessary spark to go to the next stage. We were good friends, though, and looked out for each other. Under our combined guidance, Ethan and Lily turned out well. I backed off when potential boyfriends were around Lily, though, and stayed out of the picture until their relationships ended. 1 or 2 of them were a little intimidated by me when I told them that if they hurt her in any way, they'd have me to answer to. Before the last one proposed to her, he actually asked my permission. He was a great guy, and I happily blessed their union. The wedding was very emotional. With her father gone, she asked me to walk her down the aisle. It was at the wedding that she introduced me to an old friend of hers who had flown in. With my Vanessa-administered therapy complete, I was well balanced enough to have a normal relationship and am now considering asking Vanessa to give me away at my wedding. Well, then why not? Without the payback I exacted on the 2 cheaters, would I have recovered enough to lead a normal life? Hell no. From the perspective of Garrett's ex-wife, hello, I'm Camille, and my life has gone to hell in a handbasket in the last 2 years. I think I can justify what I did back then. It's going to take some time to justify what I did last week, though. Sorry, I'll explain. Looking back on it, my life with Garrett was good. However, it had gone stale. The only thrill I had left was my first granddaughter. So when Wesley started to show interest in me as a woman, I felt like a teenager again. He was attentive and caring, and what can I say? He swept me off my feet. I knew what we had was wrong deep down, but it just felt so good. Our relationship followed the normal pattern of conversations to dates to making out. I can't remember guilt ever being an issue. By the time we crossed the line and kissed, I already knew I loved him and he loved me. We planned to leave our respective spouses and marry. A friend of mine, Denise, had been through a messy divorce and explained that her ex had taken control of all the assets at the outset and made it very difficult for her even to engage a lawyer. That's why Wesley and I quietly seized control of everything. I didn't know how his wife would react, but I was fairly sure my Garrett wouldn't be happy. We'd often talked about what constituted cheating, and I realized I was going to be well over the line already. Before Wesley and I made our announcement, I fully intended to give Garrett whatever the courts demanded after the divorce. I just wanted to be in the driving seat and protect myself from any retaliation. It was also Denise who asked me if I'd slept with Wesley yet. I'd never really enjoyed closeness that much, but a woman needs to think she's still attractive. I knew my husband still found me desirable. He asked for affection often enough. If only I'd still had the same spark for Garrett that I had with Wesley, the whole mess could have been avoided. So anyway, Denise put doubts in my head. What if Wesley wasn't up to the mark in that department when I did occasionally need it? I wanted it to be good, didn't I? By my stage of life, closeness was more an emotional thing than physical. I didn't expect Wesley to be as good as Garrett. That's what spawned my final, disastrous betrayal of my marriage. My first session with Wesley was thus a twofold exercise, one to try him out, and the other as a final bonding exercise to steel ourselves for the emotionally difficult tasks we had planned over the next few days. To be honest with myself, I think I wanted to secure Wesley's full attention so he wouldn't back out on our plans. Even then, I suspected he was quite a weak person. I know what you're thinking. Did I ignore the possibility I would be caught and make Garrett go ballistic? Did I consider the effect on my father and kids? The simple answer is no. I never expected to be caught. And if I was, I never expected Garrett's nuclear response. As for the rest, I just didn't think of it. Okay, I never compare myself to my mother. I was so young when she left us that she just didn't come into the equation. After all, it cost me. I'd like to say that the closeness with Wesley was mind-blowing. It wasn't. I found myself faking enjoyment, just as I used to do with Garrett. Men and their egos, I ask you. I still have no idea how Garrett found out about my one and only infidelity. It's just not important to me. I was devastated when I saw the look of hurt in his eyes when he came into the room. I tried to justify that to myself later, but of course I couldn't. He'd never done anything near bad enough to justify that. My guilt manifested itself as defiance for a very short time, but that didn't last long. The thought that my father had witnessed my transgression and my daughter's words just eliminated me. The look in the eyes of Wesley's daughter was almost as bad. I had no idea my husband was capable of such cruelty. When I was called by the hospital about Wesley's admission, I knew instinctively it was Garrett's doing. The doctors believed Wesley's broken jaw, concussion, bruised kidneys, 3 broken ribs, cracked tibia, and shattered groin were consistent with a hit-and-run accident. I believed differently. That's why I called the police and gave them Garrett's name and license plate number. When I called back 2 days later, they said he was no longer a person of interest. That's why I hadn't left Wesley's side for the week he was in hospital. I knew he needed my protection. Until 8 weeks ago, if you'd asked me if my Garrett could do such a thing, I'd have said no way. For 15 minutes in my old bedroom, I'd caught a glimpse of the new monster Garrett, a monster that I knew I'd created, a monster that was more than capable of unlimited cruelty. Yes, I just knew it had been Garrett. That's why just before Wesley was discharged, I called Garrett and arranged to meet at our old house. This thing had to stop. Hadn't he had enough revenge yet? Wesley and I were both destroyed. I felt sad walking up to my front door. Not as sad as I knew the conversation to come was going to be. How had I gone from loving a man to thinking of him as the enemy in such a short time? Before I rang the bell, I phoned Denise and told her that if she didn't hear from me in an hour to call the police. Garrett answered the door in his robe. Unusual, he wore no expression as he invited me in. When he asked me to hand over my phone and handbag, I kicked myself for not thinking of bringing a recorder. Then I asked myself why he was never going to admit to the attack. I stared briefly at the stranger I had known for over 27 years. I did feel remorse for how our marriage ended. By explaining how I'd fallen in love, I hoped to ease his pain and maybe get him to back off a little. He shut me down as soon as I began, saying he wasn't interested in the why. His tone was harsh and his facial expression blank. Who was this guy? I didn't recognize the face or the voice. I was stunned when he blithely admitted to beating up Wesley. When I heard his motivation, I could see exactly why he'd done it. Let's just say it didn't ease my conscience any. I genuinely didn't see why Garrett hated Wesley so much. He sure set me straight on that very quickly. I suddenly realized how self-centered I'd become. It blinded me and allowed me to rationalize the completely unacceptable. I suddenly knew not only why we were being punished, but judging by the expression on Garrett's face, it wasn't over. My asking if he remembered what love felt like was part of my prepared speech. His answer was like a knife twisting in my gut. How else could a fundamentally decent person feel? I knew I had to run. My question about future revenge was simply to see how far he'd go. I hadn't considered that Wesley's wife was a physical threat until Garrett's words. With a flash of insight, I suddenly found myself in her shoes. What would I do if she'd done to me what I'd done to her? A chill went down my spine when I discovered she was upstairs. I ran. I collected Wesley from the hospital, and then we both ran. The divorces were both finalized. The paperwork was delivered to our post office box 2 towns away from my new home. The stress of living anonymously with no friends and constantly looking over my shoulder was tremendous. We had a little money eventually. The waiting was tough. The only jobs we could get were commission-only real estate jobs. And it was a long time between paychecks. Wesley and I got married 6 months later. Looking back on it, we were 2 castaways thrown together, and it was a mistake. I also think one of the motivations was that by getting married, we could retrospectively justify the pain we had caused to so many, especially ourselves. My latest downfall started innocuously enough. Wesley's one remaining testicle never did work. He was totally incapable of getting aroused. We never could afford the course of testosterone treatment required to alleviate the problem, which caused him to be moody, insecure, and jealous. Let's face it, a marriage that has infidelity as its cornerstone is an uphill battle right from the start. His grouchiness caused me to get very unfriendly as well. A friend of mine recommended hormone replacement therapy, as it had fixed her similar condition. I balked at the probable cost, but she explained that as every second woman over 45 was on it, it was much cheaper than testosterone therapy. One doctor visit later, and as if by a miracle, life returned to a happy normal. My doctor had warned me that one of the side effects of estrogen tablets was a resurgence of my libido. He said it with a smirk, like it was a good thing. When it happens to the wife of a man with dysfunction, however, it is very destructive. I found myself more excited than I had been 5 years into my marriage to Garrett. When a guy at my new work started showing interest in me, I couldn't help responding. He was much younger than me, and it was very flattering. Hiding our dates was extremely stressful. Insanely jealous Wesley was much harder to fool than Garrett had been. The first time we kissed was like an electric shock. Not from the thrill of it, but because of the strong sense of déjà vu it triggered. I refused to go through that again. I refused to cheat. I thought long and hard, but finally came up with a solution. It was less than ideal, but Wesley had to respect my needs, didn't he? So I sat Wesley down Thursday night last week and, as gently as possible, told him I wouldn't be home Friday night. I needed to take a lover. I would be discreet. It was only physical, and I would never rub his nose in it. I took his silence Thursday night and Friday morning as reluctant acceptance. After buying me dinner in a disappointingly short encounter, my new lover fell asleep in embarrassment. I went home to Wesley in my trailer. He wasn't there. The wail of sirens alerted me to the fact that the dawn had revealed him hanging from a tree. I'd done it again, destroyed a man. I braced for the payback I knew he had organized. I was surprised to find it only consisted of a self-destruction note and a letter to his attorney. Well, the self-destruction note was emailed to all our friends who dumped me quicker than you can imagine. The letter to his attorney was to change the beneficiaries of his life insurance policy and his will from me to his children. When will I ever learn? Never mess with a man's pride.